Hi everyone, welcome back to Season 7, Episode 3 of the Choose UCalgary Podcast. For our returning listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and for our new listeners, my name is Marcus, and I am your Season 7 host for the Choose UCalgary Podcast, where we bring in current students, staff, faculty, and more to chat about our programs, admissions, student experiences, and so much more. For today's episode, I am super excited to be joined by Dr. Ben Tutolo, who is an associate professor in the Department of Geoscience at the University of Calgary, where he will talk a little bit about what geoscience is, the various career pathways in this field, research opportunities, and tips and tricks for students looking to pursue a degree in geoscience. But without further ado, thank you so much, Dr. Ben Tutolo, for being part of the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Marcus.
Awesome. You want to introduce yourself a little bit further for us today?
Yeah, sure. My name is Ben Tutolo. I'm associate professor in geoscience. I've been here now for nearly 6 years. So I arrived in Calgary in 2017 after having done a postdoc at the University of Oxford in the United Kingdom, and then prior to that I did my PhD at the University of Minnesota in the United States.
Fantastic. Thank you for that introduction. I know you have a ton of experiences and knowledge in this field, so I know a lot of our listeners will definitely find this super useful and helpful as well. So hopping straight into some questions here. For our listeners who might only know what geoscience is kind of on a surface level, can you expand a bit more on what geoscience actually is?
Yeah, sure. So geoscience is effectively the science of the world around us, right? We live on Earth. Geo essentially means Earth, and so it is the study of the biological, the physical, the chemical processes that shape the Earth around us. So things like studying the water cycle, the rock cycle, the potential for anthropogenic contaminations in the environment, all of that sort of falls into this field of geoscience.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely a great answer. I definitely learned something new today, so that's pretty cool. I wanted to ask, as an associate professor in geoscience, why did you personally choose to study and teach geoscience?
Yeah, so it's been a long and circuitous route, but I started way back whenever I was sort of a teenager or even younger, being outside all the time and really appreciating the world around me. I grew up in Pennsylvania, which has lots of streams and rivers and mountains and lots of places to get outside. And I sort of went to the Penn State University in Pennsylvania to try and study those processes around me and how to sort of conserve the environment. And so I was originally an environmental engineer, but I found that to be very pragmatic and not necessarily allowing me to flex my intellectual muscles as much as I would like to. And so I transitioned as a graduate student into geology. And so that's sort of where I became truly a geoscientist and truly thinking about, geoscience problems, broad brush. And after that, I've stuck with geoscience ever since. And I've done lots of interesting problems. It's never gotten boring. I get to do environmental problems, planetary science problems, all of that I get to work on as a geologist and spread that word with students via teaching as well.
That's awesome. So I think it is super important for students to pursue a degree that they are really passionate about and something that they'll love. So hopefully hearing your story will get some inspiration out there for some students wanting to pursue something in geoscience and make that impact on the world. Now kind of diving into geoscience at UCalgary and what that might look like for a prospective student, what are some ways students can gain some hands-on experience in geoscience?
Right, so all of our courses in some way or other are focused on experiential learning. And so whether that's just a lab course, for example, my aqueous geochemistry course where we're doing experiments actually in the lab as part of the lab sections week to week, or our field schools. So we're here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, so we have lots of field schools that go towards the mountains and get to study the mountain processes as well as hydrologic processes in the mountains. But also to the east of here is the Badlands, right? So we have folks that go out near Drumheller to learn about those processes that shape that environment. And we also have international field schools like the Hawaii-based field school that we have every summer where we have students going to Hawaii to study volcanology and igneous processes. So I think the way that we gain hands-on access is through our teaching, and we have a very strong focus on experiential learning in our department.
Awesome. And kind of in regards to field school, what does like a typical field school or field course would look like for a student?
Yeah, so they vary. We have a geophysics field school, we have an introductory field school, and we have an advanced field school, and then again these international field schools. In general, some of them stay here, so those ones tend to be more approachable and easier to sort of join in as the summer is going on. So we often will have students that, you end up in Drumheller for a few days, you end up in the mountains for a few days as part of that field school. The international ones, we send students away, and they stay away in places like Hawaii for a while, studying those processes there. So they vary, but in the end, I think all of them get some hands-on experience, and so lots of team building with your cohort as well, which is the other amazing thing about the field school is it's not just about learning, but it's also about making connections.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, field school definitely sounds like a fantastic way for students to get that exposure and to get that hands-on, first-hand experience into what a career in that field could actually look like. So, what do you think are some important skills students interested in geoscience should learn to succeed as a student and eventually later on in their career?
Yeah, sure. So geoscience in general is an inherently interdisciplinary field, right? So it combines biology, physics, chemistry, you name it, somehow that stuff comes all together in our study of the Earth. And so, taking those classes and really, I think, we're forced, or we must take these classes as early on in our career in university, like these introductory chemistry classes. But then we have chemistry classes that are specific to geochemistry, for example. So they need a strong foundation in understanding Earth materials and Earth processes, but also increasingly, and especially now in the 21st century, the ability to manage big data sets. We're acquiring enormous data sets on the Earth around us. So manage those data sets and then do computational analyses based on those data sets. So another focus of our geoscientists is how can we actually learn these skills, computational analysis skills, and big data skills, that can then help us to understand the world around us. And in the end, one of the most important things any geoscientist will need, and any scientist more generally, is great communication skills. So we need the ability to be able to explain the things that we as geoscientists are trained to understand to those who might not necessarily understand them because they're members of the public, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. So you definitely dived into both kind of technical skills and soft skills that a student should have as well. So you heard it here first from a professor firsthand. So for any student listening, definitely take notes on some of these if you want to excel as a student and hopefully later on in your career as well. What are some career paths students can take with a degree in geoscience?
Yeah, the possibilities are endless. Of course, there's geoscience-focused ones. We have students that will go and work in industry, and that's industry like big companies as well as startups. We have lots of students heading out into startups these days. There's lots of ability to be a part of the regulatory system. So government jobs will often require environmental skills, geoscience skills that enable you to understand the environment and make sure that you're meeting policy specifications. And then also there's of course the academic route, that one which I took, right? So you can end up being an academic rather than going out into the field. In all cases, right, so those are the industries, in all cases, the possibilities for what you specifically work on are variable, right? So you could be interested in environment or water, you can be interested in policy, resource extraction or resource conservation, climate change adaptation and solutions, planetary science, and so on. All of that ends up being important as a geoscientist. And then in the end, we have lots of folks that graduate from our program that become educators, right? Because a geoscientist understands the world around us and therefore has the ability to explain the world around us to students and so on.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Definitely a wide variety of different careers students can explore from, which is always a great thing for students to keep their options as open as possible. Now I kind of want to talk a little bit about research. So as a top research university in Canada, I think talking about research is important and is also useful for students who might be thinking about going into something in the sciences. Are there any research opportunities for students at our university who might be interested in geoscience?
Yeah, I've found actually working with students in our program to be one of the most enjoyable things that I do here. So we have the program for the undergraduate research experience, which is university-wide, and so students apply for that and they get funding to work with a research group for a summer. There's the USRA, the Undergraduate Student Research Award, which is administered by NSERC, the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, but often is department-specific and then is truly researcher-specific, so advised by an individual research group. I've often also had senior thesis students or other students that are just keen to do research come and work with me. So I've been here again for 6 years now, and I've had approximately 30 undergraduates come and work with me in my research group. So there's lots of opportunities, and I will never say no to an interested undergraduate because there's lots of fun stuff to do out there for those students in our research field.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. I know a lot of our listeners will find a lot of value in that answer, especially ones who are interested in doing something research related. So thank you for that. Friendly reminder that our deadline to submit your application or make changes to your program choices for our fall 2023 intake closes on March 1st, 2023. Apply to an undergraduate degree program at the University of Calgary today by visiting the link in our episode notes and for more information on how to apply. We hope to see you soon. Kind of branching back now into your experiences here at UCalgary so far. For you personally, what has been your favorite current or past project that you have been a part of here at the university?
Yeah, sure. It's hard to pick just one, but I guess the one that I get routinely the most excited about is the fact that I've been selected to be part of the Mars Science Laboratory Curiosity rover mission. So that's on Mars, exploring Gale Crater. There's an enormous sediment pile there that we're looking at and trying to understand, was early Mars habitable and why is modern Mars not habitable? And we're studying that transition. So that project has been extraordinary, not only because I've made connections with people around the world, but also because I have students and postdocs here at the University of Calgary working with me on that project as we sort of build this understanding of ancient Mars.
Awesome. Yeah, that is super cool, super interesting. You definitely have a lot of cool experiences and a ton of unique projects you've been a part of, so definitely the right person for the podcast today. Diving in a little bit about misconceptions. So are there any common misconceptions about geoscience you hear about that you think should be addressed?
Yeah, I think one of the most important ones that we get all the time is that geoscience is simply about extraction of resources from the environment. Sure, we do that, and we do that often because it's necessary for societal progress, right? All of the resources that will fuel the clean energy transition will come out of the ground, right? Or the majority of them will come out of the ground, which means geoscientists must do that. But also, at the same time, geoscientists are important for conservation. They're important for simply understanding the way that the Earth works. Geoscientists are important for all of the sorts of things that we love about the Earth around us. And so I think, although geoscientists do extraction, do mining, etc., we do a lot more than just that. And I think that's one of the most common misconceptions. A secondary misconception is that geoscience is just for people that really love being outside. Because be that as it may, I mean, my pathway into geoscience involved being outside. But for example, as part of the Mars Science Laboratory mission, I work with people that never get to go to the place that we're studying, right? It's Mars. We never get to go there. Everything that we do is digital, right? And so you don't have to be a person that is, hiking up mountains day and night in order to be a geoscientist. It takes all kinds, and certainly it takes all kinds to understand properties of our planet as well as other planets in our solar system.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'm glad we cleared the air a little bit about those common misconceptions. I know me personally, I had the same misconception, so I'm glad you're able to clear that up a little bit. I kind of want to talk about how UCalgary's geoscience programs are different from other geoscience programs within Canada.
Yeah, so the most important thing, I think, is that we're here in a very special place in Canada, right? We are at the heart of Canada's energy industry, right? And that energy industry is being forced to and is really looking at making an enormous transition to be much more sustainable into the future. And so one thing that we will always have a focus on and need to understand is how can our students, our graduates, be more qualified or more specially attuned to understanding the energy transition, climate change solutions. How are we going to do that? And I think that's one of the most important things that we have here at the University of Calgary in our geoscience department. The other thing that I found in talking with my colleagues is that our undergraduates not only get more exposure to research, but they also get more exposure to amazing instrumentation in our department that really has been purchased for and is used almost exclusively by undergraduate researchers. So we use them in classes, but we also use them for these senior thesis projects and these USRA and PURE projects, these funded summer internship projects, that our students here, our undergrads, are, they're running the controls. They're doing it themselves. And I think that is something that our students get that a lot of other students at other universities simply do not get.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great way to differentiate us and our programs from other ones in Canada as well, especially since we are one of the largest geoscience departments in Canada. So it is nice to have that differentiation with other programs as well. A lot of our listeners will mostly be prospective students who are currently in high school or maybe looking to pursue a degree in geoscience. What piece of advice would you give to a student looking to study geoscience here at the University of Calgary?
Yeah, so I think the question of whether you will like geoscience or not is typically answerable by yes, you're going to like some flavor of it, right? Geoscience is the study of the world around us. If you're a scientist or intellectually curious in any way about the world around you, you're going to love geoscience. And so if you're really curious about sort of how a degree program will go here, take one of our intro courses. We've got really cool intro courses. Like they're not just introductory to geology, but things like a climate change course, a geohazards course. And I think the spoiler alert for all of those is that you're going to really like them, right? They're interesting, they're approachable scientific courses where you're being challenged and introduced to the concepts of science and how science works, but they don't require an enormous amount of background knowledge before you arrive. So I think that is, I guess, what I would say is the most easy way to sort of realize or check to see if this degree is right for you is take one of our first year classes and see what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic advice. And I think that also kind of stems from our earlier conversation about going into something that you're passionate about, something that you love and that you'll enjoy, and just testing out the waters. And who knows, maybe it's going to be a good fit for you too. So
yeah, I would even argue. So I mean, a lot of us, for example, will come to university and want to do computer science or chemistry or biology, but all of those come together in geoscience, right? And so I think the fun and interesting thing is that you are not doing very academic, esoteric things as a geoscientist. You're applying the knowledge that comes from those fields to the earth. And so I think that transition that we get, so a lot of us in high school will have to have taken chemistry and biology courses, and maybe if we're lucky, a geoscience course. But geoscience at the university level allows you to explore those in much more detail, and I think for the best. I think a lot of students really appreciate that.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. When you look at students who succeed and excel in this program, what stands out for you about those students?
Yeah, I find that the ones that do the best, or at least that are the most successful, are those that I see the most often, right? So the ones that are engaged, they're around, they're going to be parts of the clubs, the undergraduate clubs, or parts of the undergraduate events, and so on. So I think that those students, the ones that realize their passion is for geoscience and then pursue that throughout their academic journey, are those ones that do the best. And I think there's aspects of you need to work hard in order to succeed, but also you need to play hard. You need to enjoy the folks that you're working with, and I think the clubs offer that. So they offer this camaraderie that you get, and the same with the field schools that you get through interaction with other students that are going through the same processes that you're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is super important to do as much as you can in university, like you mentioned, clubs, extracurriculars, things more than just academics as well, if you really want to excel and succeed in this program as well. So kind of as a wrapping up question, were there any final pieces of advice you wanted to highlight about geoscience that you want our listeners to know more about? Or if you even have any exciting upcoming projects that you wanted to share for yourself or just the Department of Geoscience as a whole?
Yeah, sure. I think many probably might expect that as these enormous parts of our economy, like oil and gas, are sort of waning in the 21st century, that geoscience might be less relevant than ever. But it's actually exactly the opposite of that, right? The energy transition will be fueled by geoscientists, right? We need to discover those resources. We need to sustainably exploit those resources. And we need to make sure that we are building windmills, building solar panels, and so on out of the earth and the materials that it can provide for us. And so I would say that geoscience is now more relevant than ever. And we are, in my group and across the Department of Geoscience, working more and more on these climate change solutions. How can we remove carbon dioxide directly from the atmosphere and ensure that that CO2 is no longer heating the planet? And so we're thinking about ocean-based climate change solutions. We're thinking about land-based climate change solutions and everything in between. So I think that avenue for research is a place where the University of Calgary is extremely well situated to succeed. And I think that it's going to be a really enjoyable time to do that.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that insightful answer as always. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ben Tutolo, for being such a great guest on our podcast today. I personally learned so much about geoscience that I didn't know before, and I'm sure our listeners out there learned something new as well. And also, a huge thank you to all of our new and returning listeners out there who tuned in to listen to this episode. Everything we talked about today will be linked in the episode notes for those of you who want to learn more about geoscience. Is there also anything anyone can reach out to if they want to learn more about geoscience?
Yeah, sure. They can always send an email directly to geoscience@ucalgary.ca, and then the folks that monitor that email address will certainly be able to route it to the right person.
Awesome. And if you also have any questions for me or the recruitment team, you can shoot us a DM on Instagram at choose.ucalgary or University of Calgary Future Students on Facebook. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Ben Tutolo, for being part of the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Marcus.